Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, I'm joined by the great William Brad Alice. Hello, William. How are you doing?
Doing well, Michael.
All right, we have got a lot to get to this show. We're going to first and foremost, we're going to talk about Arizona basketball in the West Regional. What are your initial thoughts, Brad, when you saw this?
You know, I like the way the bracket broke for him. Doing a little more research, I'm not quite as confident, but obviously I think Arizona and UNC are very close. Either one could have been the one. I think UNC probably deserved it for playing a little bit better down the stretch, even though I think Arizona was 8-2 in the final 10, maybe 7-3. But this is, again, this team's going to go as their guards go. We said they can win without Boswell, but they cannot win without Caleb Love, and they didn't have either against USC, and they lost. So I don't think Long Beach State can beat them, barring another disaster. They're not as good as that Princeton team was last year.
Right.
But after that, everyone can play.
Yeah, they're not nearly as good as that Princeton team, but I am going to say this. I see that with Long Beach State, the one thing about Long Beach State is that they have there's a lot of goodwill, I guess, with Long Beach State, but they're not very good, to be honest with you. I mean, again, with teams like this, the one thing about it is, yes, they caught fire, but this is also a team that is going to fire its coach. So you need to keep that in mind. Now, granted, they have 5 guys that are scoring double figures, so you got to factor that. You got to factor that in. And as we've seen, you can't take any team lightly. Plus, they have Marcus Sahonis from Washington State, who is their leading scorer. But this is a game, let's be honest, Brad, that Arizona should roll.
No, if you look at last year, Princeton was the best team in the Ivy League,
right?
Which is not a bad league. In fact, this year, I'll be honest, I'd rather see Princeton in this year than some of these lower Big Ten teams,
right?
The lower SEC teams.
Oh, we're going to make fun of the Big Ten.
I mean, they're not Indiana State, but when they go 28-4 or something like that, but they lost in the semifinals to a bad Brown team. You don't get in. With this, again, you're right. This is a team that had to win 3 games in 3 days after firing their coach. Frankly, I think Don Monson is a good coach, but I think he's underachieved at Long Beach State. How many Pac-12 transfers has he peppered that roster with? Compare it to what Pasternak has done at UCSB with a very similar model. But again, if Arizona goes out and doesn't respect them, sure, they can lose. I don't think they will. Once you get in the second round, all bets are off, though. And again, I like the way it shapes up. But, you look at Dayton, they got 3 guys who can shoot the 3. They also have Deron Holmes, the Phoenix kid, who's kind of a beast inside. Baylor's also a team that shoots the 3 very well, and that's been Arizona's bugaboo.
All right, now let's just assume that Arizona beats Long Beach State, because again, I know I don't really want to get ahead of myself. I totally get that that's dangerous, but we're not going to spend the next 3 days just talking about Long Beach State. I'll put it to you like this. Arizona is a 20-point favorite against Long Beach State. If Arizona cannot beat Long Beach State in the first round, then we have some massive questions that we have to ask about Tommy Lloyd at that point. Arizona should beat Long Beach State. Do you agree with everything I just said, William?
Yes. Okay. And I would also agree. And again, I'm not one of these guys who says tournament success is the big and only. But if you get bounced in the first round 2 years in a row and you're not Lute Olson, who also had a couple Final Fours on your resume, those are big questions and legit questions, because you shouldn't lose to a 15 seed ever. Arizona's done it twice in their history. Do it twice in 2 years. Big trouble. But yes, right. I think they beat, because again, I don't think Long Beach State's very good, other than I know they hung with San Diego State a few months ago, but
all right, now
they didn't beat them.
All right, let's talk a little bit now about that next round. Mr. Tyler Warden, very good point. Dayton does worry me. One thing that Arizona has not done well this year is defend the 3-point shot, whether that's by design, whether that is just going into the game saying that we don't care. Dayton is one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. They've got one guy that shoots almost 50% from 3. And the thing about it, too, that's a little bit disconcerting, William, or disconcerting, is that they also have Deron Holmes, who is one of the handful of best players probably in the country. He's probably a top 20 player in the nation. But you load him around with shooters. This isn't the type of game, if Arizona gets Dayton in the second round, this isn't the type of game where you can just hope they miss, because there's a good chance they won't.
Yeah, if from a pure matchup standpoint, you want Nevada to win. Nevada, again, another good scoring team, but they don't have the elite 3-point shooters. They really live and die at the line.
Mhm.
And I just can't see them getting to the line enough. I think the matchups really favor Arizona against Nevada, where Dayton can shoot their way into that game. You know, obviously they have to defend Arizona. Dayton not, from my understanding, a great defensive team, unless they're turning you over. Deron Holmes, though, I don't think he will do well inside against Ballo, but he can take Ballo outside. He does have a little bit of an inside-outside game. So Dayton is a matchup. Again, Dayton's been so up and down and inconsistent that you're not your typical team from that conference who in years past are really scary, except they do a lot of things well that Arizona doesn't counter well.
I would rather, Brad, I would rather play Nevada. Steve Alford's done a very good job at Nevada. Sometimes you find coaches that's just kind of their speed. And I think Steve Alford was probably a little miscast at UCLA, but I think at Nevada or at New Mexico, Steve Alford is right in his wheelhouse. I do not worry about Nevada nearly the same way that I worry about Dayton, but I'm also going to come back to this, and I'm going to keep saying this, that if Arizona can't get past Dayton or Nevada with this team, because let's be honest here, this is a much more complete team than last year. Well, again, we got bigger problems at play because Arizona, with the exception of Deron Holmes, is better than Dayton at every single position.
No, you're right, and that's again, if it happens it's going to happen every once in a while. You're going to get upset in the tournament.
I get it.
It can't keep happening. And again, there is, you can look at it. If you want to say that Arizona is in a similar position after Lute's first Final Four, that is a team that didn't get past the Sweet 16 for like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, but Lute also had multiple Final Fours. He inherited a dumpster program.
So exactly. No, I'm not even talking those first 3 years. I'm talking after the 88 Final Four. I think it went Sweet 16, second round, and not in that order.
Right.
But yeah, Tommy Lloyd has to start, because the irony is everyone was so down on Miller. Miller started out like 11-3 in NCAA tournaments. What do you have? Or 11-4. He had the 3 Elite Eights and a Sweet 16 in his first 4 tournaments at Arizona. Then it kind of went downhill. But yeah, Lloyd has something to prove. And the other thing that they have to do better, and this is the other thing that scares me about this Arizona team, they're not very good in close games.
Right.
I think they're 1-4, 1-5 in like 2 possession games. That now, granted, a lot of times they hit the big shot late to keep them
it's a little not quite true, but yes,
it's like Jason Gardner. I don't think ever hit a game-winning shot.
Right.
But how many times did he hit that 3 that put him up 6 and the game was over?
Right.
Same thing here. But yeah, that again, because Baylor is also been in a lot of close games and hasn't won many, so that's an interesting matchup as well. But to me, yeah, if you can't get to the Sweet 16 with this team, there are questions. And, I think Tommy Lloyd's a very good coach? Yes. Is he a guy who didn't get to cut his teeth at Long Beach State or Long Beach Community College or Iowa? Yes. Or Xavier, if you talk about Miller. But you have to perform at Arizona, and that's what it comes down to. Arizona is a big boy basketball school who, again, hasn't been to a Final Four since 2001.
Let's talk about accountability here a little bit. But first, the BetMGM Sportsbook app. Sign up for BetMGM today. Use bonus code PHNX. Place your first BetMGM Sportsbook wager through BetMGM Sportsbook mobile app for at least $5. You'll receive $100 instantly in additional winnings, regardless of your wager's outcome. Check out the show notes for details. And Jacob Franklin, do we have a new disclaimer? Is this true? Ooh, look at this.
Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 Massachusetts. 21 plus only. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP Arizona. 1-800-BETS-OFF Iowa. 1-800-981-0023 Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Bonus bets are non-withdrawable. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. See BetMGM.com for terms. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, North Carolina, Ontario, or Puerto Rico.
All right, Brad, that is the place to go. Go to the BetMGM Sportsbook and get all of that in. Check it out. All right, now, Arizona is at the time now where you need to win basketball games. Tommy Lloyd has stuck with players. He has defended them through thick and thin, hasn't necessarily benched them when maybe some other coaches would have. I'm at the point with this. You start Kylan Boswell, but you're also at the point where you need to win games. If this is the Kylan Boswell from the Pac-12 tournament and that we saw for a good percentage of the season, you've got a player in the bench, a total boss in Jaden Bradley. You need to go to Jaden Bradley, and you need to go to him early. The time for saying, well, we're obviously just going to give you 25 minutes, that time is over, Brad.
Yeah, and frankly, from my understanding, talking to some people that I hadn't talked to in a while, there's a little bit of the Miles Simon, Jason Terry at play with Boswell and Bradley, where can a guy handle mentally having his role changed? Um, there was a time
That
when
is the
Luke,
first time in history that Miles Simon's on-court performance has been compared to Kylan Boswell. I know what you're saying, though.
because there was a time when Luke wanted to bench Miles, when he had the academic stuff going on,
Mhm.
and they knew that Jason Terry was mature enough to handle coming off the bench, and maybe Miles Simon wasn't.
Right.
Again, revisionist history, because we all know what Miles Simon then did as a junior and senior, and things were great. Bradley can handle it. Again, I am a Jaden Bradley fanboy. I want him to be the starting point guard at
You
Arizona.
said this before the season, William. Got to
I
give you
did.
full credit.
And, again, I was the guy who also said Kylan Boswell absolutely should have played more against Princeton. But Boswell has shown to me just this inconsistency, this ability to hurt the basketball team, whether it's his on-court performance. I mean, he was benched for basically the entire second half against USC, and it was when Bradley and KJ Lewis were on the court that they
And he
made
responded by going to the blackjack tables.
I think he suffered because he went to the blackjack tables, or the Oregon game. I mean, I'm sorry, I was talking about Oregon, but there's a lack of maturity there. I think we all know some of these stories. We've seen the pictures. I've been told it's not a Photoshop. I've been told it may have been even worse than it looks like. So give me a guy who went to war with Alabama last year. I know he got his role diminished, but that was more for performance and the other guy stepping up. But I want a guy I know is not going to hurt me. And then if Boswell catches fire, great. Vinny Johnson him. Microwave him. Heat him up and let him go.
Here's the difference, though, that I think, and to kind of go with your Miles Simon comparison, Michael Dickerson was known as an upperclassman for not being around in big games. That wasn't necessarily the case as a freshman or as a sophomore, but he was known for that. But guess what? When you played Kentucky or played North Carolina, the ball wasn't in his hands. So he was at least able to focus on defense, and he wasn't exactly destroying you. Boswell has the ball in his hands. And against Oregon, I had a buddy of mine that messaged me when Boswell did like the 360 flip in the air and then threw it out of bounds or whatever. You could just tell this wasn't him. You can't have that in the NCAA tournament. There's the time for being nice is over. And especially when you've got a team that's built to win now and a player in Jaden Bradley that defensively is ready to go and offensively, while not a great shooter, has the full confidence that you can tell of putting the ball in the basket.
Well, and Jaden Bradley, you could actually, in a weird way, make that comparison to Mike D. Because Mike D was the third or fourth scoring option on that team when things were rolling. So you could make him the defensive stopper. You could not put the ball. You could count on Bibby and Simon and Terry if you needed to. Although Dickerson was a gifted scorer when his head was on.
Dickerson was the most gifted scorer on the team.
He was, but again, who hit all the big buckets in the NCAA tournament?
Oh, I know for sure.
Same thing with Jaden Bradley. If Jaden Bradley goes out and has no points, no rebounds, 3 assists, he might still be having a great game on the defensive end, keeping that offense moving. Because there are other guys who can rack up assists in that system. I mean, we've seen nights when Pella and Love combined for like 13 assists.
Right.
But yet it's Bradley running the offense or Boswell. So that's what they need. Again, they need, to me, the two guys you have to have putting up scoring numbers every game is Love and Larson.
Right.
Everything else, you have to have guys not hurt you. Do you want that double-double out of Umar? Of course you do. But they could win a game by 20, and Keshad Johnson could have 4 points and 8 rebounds.
Right.
They could also win a game because Keshad Johnson goes off for 18. But there hasn't been a game that I can recall where both Larson and Love have played poorly and they've won.
Right. Now, with Keshad Johnson, I don't even necessarily care about his stat line, although I do think that from a defensive perspective, he's got to bring it. But I need to see rebounds, because when he brings the energy, this team is totally different. We've seen that. He is kind of that ultimate trump card because nobody else on the roster, when Keshad Johnson is playing with energy, like I keep going back to that Washington game when he had 3 blocks and like 13 rebounds in the first 8 seconds. You've got to be able to get that type of performance out of him, because again, this isn't a dude that is to use the Michael Dickerson comparison, he's not being relied on for the, the pull-up jumper from the elbow or the 18-footer. He's being relied on for hustle and energy, and he's got to set that tone. He's been here before. He's got to set that tone.
And that's what he does well, is he gets those hard-to-get hustle rebounds.
Yes.
Umar Ballo cleans the glass, but 9 out of 10 of his rebounds are the ones he should get because he's...
Brad, you just froze. All right. William Brad Alice has frozen. That is okay. I will continue to... Brad, are you back?
Yeah, everything went black for a second.
Okay, you're good. All right, welcome back. Well, Keyshawn Johnson, you were making a very good point.
Yes, it's hustle. It's those tough rebounds. It's those, I'm going to rip it away from your guy because I want it more. Everything he was advertised as. And when he does that, again, Arizona wins. When he disappears a little bit, Arizona struggles.
Right. And that's just, and there's really no excuse for that. He's been here before. This is why you brought him in. He's a 5th-year senior. Now let's talk a little bit about Umar Ballo. I think Umar Ballo last year, Umar Ballo was playing with a broken hand or something that wasn't really good. This is a team that against overmatched or let's say undersized teams, Umar's got to eat. Umar's got to be able to be 18 and 13. We talked all year about how he gets grown man double-doubles. He's got to be 18 and 13, in my opinion, Brad. These have to be big boy double-doubles. Granted, if you go against somebody a little bit later on, like an Infali Dante or something, then you recalibrate that a little bit. But he's got to dominate. I mean, he's been really good all season. He has got to be that dude.
I mean, and here's the thing I've liked about his game the last month or so. He's rebounding.
Mm-hmm.
He's rebounding against tall guys, short guys, athletic guys, physical guys. I mean, what is it? Is he on? I can't remember if he hit it against Oregon, but he's got that. He had that streak. He gets the rebounds he should get for the most part. Does he have? He has pretty good hands.
Right.
He didn't get that key one. Well, it was a couple weeks ago, but other than that, he gets rebounds he should get. He keeps them away from shorter players. He uses his body well to keep those athletic guys from stealing rebounds from him. So yeah, he needs to be in that 9+ range every game. And if he does that, Arizona's in good shape. He needs to clean up the offensive glass when he has the opportunity, block a couple shots. And then if he can get you that 10 to 12 to 14 to 18 points, depending on who you're picking on, great. But they could win a game where he's 6 and 10. They can't win a game where he's 10 and 6.
Well, you know what? With Ballo, I think the effect is kind of cumulative throughout the game because he is such a big guy. I mean, you look at him; he is huge. And when he's out there, and this is not where it's nice too that his conditioning has been able to keep up because you just get tired after a while. I think people talk all the time about Umar Ballo's conditioning, but Umar Ballo tires people out. Mr. Tyler Warden had a very good stat. I think he's the 26th most effective person in the entire country, if I'm not mistaken, in drawing fouls. I'm actually surprised it was that low because it does seem like every time he gets the ball, he does draw a foul.
Yeah, that might be something that he doesn't do as well in the tournament when they start to eat those whistles a little bit. But you're right. When Arizona can throw out, and I don't know they list Ballo at 260, but he's
right.
A big, large man.
Yes.
He eats up a lot of space in the paint. You pound on him, it's like hitting a wall.
Right.
Then you bring out Krivas, who, again, not nearly as daunting width.
But he's still a big dude.
And he's long, and he takes up a lot of room. People forget one reason that Arizona's defense was so good with the pack line with Tarczewski. He didn't block shots. He just ate up space.
Right.
You had to take 3 extra steps to get around him.
Right.
Ballo does some of the same thing. And again, if you're that big man who's banging on him all game, you're going to get worn down because, again, he's a big, strong, physical, hefty dude.
All right, now, Mr. Tyler Warden, we rely on Mr. Tyler Warden. Ballo draws 5.9 fouls per 40 minutes, 68th in the country, and actually less than his 6.4. Zach Edey, by 26th in the country. I read it wrong. But either way, Umar Ballo draws a lot of fouls. It does feel like he draws more fouls than that even. Now, one thing that we got to talk about is the free throws. Listen. What's weird about Umar is there are some times when he steps to the line and it looks like he is comfortable shooting free throws. It's not always the Shaquille O'Neal weird thing where it's like, where it looks like there's a little bit of arc and it looks like he's a little bit more comfortable. And then there's other times where it looks like it's just a prayer. It's kind of like the Kylan Boswell face at the beginning of the game, where you just have an idea that, okay, Umar can make 60% or Kylan's going to be all right. But I will say this, with Umar, if he can shoot 58%, boom, 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 we'll take it, William.
No, absolutely. And I'd love to go back and watch video and see if his form starts to decrease when he's been out there longer stretches.
That's a good question.
That 6 minute stretch.
Mr. Tyler Warden, get on this.
Because you're right. There are sometimes you look at him and you're like, oh, that dude can shoot. He's great.
Right.
He's and he'll make 3 or 4 or 5 in a row. And then he'll brick 3 in a row. And they look awful. And it does look Shaq-esque. So again, I wonder how much of that's conditioning or, it's free throws are mental. Because I know guys who can knock down without anyone on the court with them 80% of their 3-point shots and then step inside and brick 5 in a row. It's a weird mental thing. And you wonder, is it, did he get elbowed in the ribs and suddenly he, not concentrating on his form?
Now, let's say that you want to go to some of these games and you're not exactly sure how. Game time, my friends, game time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHNX for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, now we got to talk about Caleb Love. I've been a big fan of Caleb Love all year, but he's played like crap the last 3 games. There's no doubt about it. I was not okay with it at the time, but Tony Gimino, who every now and then makes a good point. Anthony said that he goes, when Arizona made that run to kind of get back in the game against Oregon, and then Tommy Lloyd brought Love back in. In hindsight, I'm all right with bringing Love back in because, listen, you're going to ride or die with Caleb Love this season. Some people don't like that. I'm all right with it. I'm okay with what Tommy Lloyd did in that spot there, William.
Yeah, because it's a calculated risk because he's the one guy who's consistently made big shots, and Pella was struggling too. I think if Pella had been hotter longer, I mean, he heated up a little bit during that run, but he was awful early too. Maybe you try to ride Pella as the hot hand.
You see Pella in the NBA. I just don't see it, man. I'd love to be wrong. I just don't see it. He does not look like an NBA player to me.
I don't know anymore. Because I have all these experts telling me he's a 3-and-D guy in the NBA, and I don't think he's athletic enough. Could I see him playing a role as an outside the rotation guy? Yeah, but I'll be pleasantly surprised because again, there are people smarter than me who like him. Of course, there are people smarter than me who thought I was insane for saying, I think someone gives McConnell a chance and maybe he sticks a few years.
Right.
I did not see this though with McConnell. Let me add that.
Right.
So who knows?
Yeah, I just don't, like I said, I just don't see it. That's totally off topic. But Pella's another one. Pella has got to be, in my opinion, I don't need Pella to have 20 points per game. That's not really his play. But I need Pella to be the kind of that stat sheet filler. I need Pella to get me 13 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, something like that, and avoid the really weird kind of brain dead turnovers that occur from time to time.
Yeah, to me, whatever he does, he has to do it efficiently. So if he takes 4 shots, I need him to go 3 for 4. Right. And if he takes 8 shots, I need him to go 4 for 8. Or I can't have him going 1 for whatever.
Right.
Same thing with Love. They just can't have bad shooting nights. And again, look back historically at all the Arizona teams who were really, really good and got bounced. Almost all of them, one of the hot hands went cold.
Right.
Whether it was, Damon against Arkansas, whether it was Kerr against Oklahoma, whether, Gardner.
It was everybody except JT against Utah.
Exactly. That's just how it's, and again, that's pretty common. But yeah, if those guys shoot well and they don't have massive turnovers, they're going to win games.
Right.
And that's all there is to it.
Ryan Neal makes a great point. The great Ryan Neal. All right. I feel like we've talked about it ad nauseum, but Caleb unlocks so much more when he drives. This is true. When Caleb Love, because here's the thing with Caleb Love, is that Caleb Love can score from all 3 levels. He can make the 3, he can get the pull-up, and he can get to the hoop. I totally agree with him. When he gets to the basket first, when his game gets going off of that, I love it. And honestly, I think that unlocks the best Caleb Love.
Yeah, and Caleb likes to shoot to open up the drive, but there are a lot of games he needs to drive to open up the shot. So
Yeah.
he's not taking that pull up from 30. He can take the pull up from 24.
Right. Yeah. Now I look at like I said, and I look at this draw though, getting back to this draw. Oh, great question by Five of a Kind Media. Let's see here. So who does Tommy put in the middle to beat the zone? Pella turns it over. Keyshawn. I think you're going to go with Pella. I mean, that's going to be the guy. Listen, you'd like him to be Luke Walton, where he's always going to find the right guy, but there isn't a Luke Walton on this team. But Pella is I think the most uniquely qualified to be that dude.
Yeah, again, there's no ideal situation, but yeah, I think he's probably the guy.
Right. Now, getting back to this bracket. This bracket plays out well, though, man. It's not like you've got what I was worried about, and granted, this wasn't going to happen because of their seeding. Was I didn't want to see a St. Mary's in the second round or some team like that. If you can't beat Dayton, then we got bigger problems at play. Because again, I don't want to make Dayton is a very good 3-point shooting team, but again, Dayton is also not a team that will. Dayton's going to be an underdog by 9 to 11 points in that game. I do want to play Nevada, though. I make no bones about that. I would far rather play Nevada.
No, and I would too, because again, Nevada is a team that makes their living driving, getting to the foul line. I think they lead the nation in free throw attempts, or they're right up there.
It's a tough team. It's a good team.
And again, Arizona's going to be more athletic, so they were going to foul less than some of those Mountain West counterparts. And Arizona defends really well. The one thing they don't defend very well, the 3-point shot sometimes. And that's, again, where Dayton makes their living.
Right. Now, the one thing that Arizona does have going for it, and this is something that will definitely, I think, comes into play later on, is that you got two new, as Charles Barkley says, you got two nuclear weapons coming off the bench in KJ Lewis and Jaden Bradley. I'm going to have a short coming out about this a little bit later about, the difference between Arizona and Carolina and why it's favored. But a big part of it, though, is KJ Lewis. KJ Lewis, you can bring in, and he can guard anybody 1.5 through 4, and he's a dynamic finisher. Jaden Bradley is the same way. In this era of college basketball, you don't generally see probably a future lottery pick coming off the bench, or a player like Bradley that, let's be honest, is probably better than the point guard in front of him.
No, and then when you mix Krivas in, and Krivas is clearly the third of that group, but again, he gives you a unique player. Not many teams are bringing a 7'2" kid who can move fairly well and block shots off the bench.
Right.
So yeah, Arizona, I'd have to look down the line. They have one of the best benches, maybe not the deepest, but one of the best benches in this tournament.
Yes, exactly. Don't you feel, you mentioned Krivas a couple times, very good point. Don't you feel that there is going to be some game, like a Donnell Harris game when Arizona won the title, where Krivas is going to have to play, whether that's foul trouble, where that's a turned ankle, whatever the case may be, where Krivas is going to have to play, 7 to 14 very valuable minutes?
Yeah, or you need a change of pace. You need to block some shots. But yeah, you feel someone, if you look at all the great runs, someone came off the bench to give you key moments. And It's happened time and time again in Arizona history. Obviously, JT's the great example, but that was his role. But yes, Donnell Harris or, Kirk Walters against UAB. Kind of go down the list, and there's always that one unsung guy, and maybe it's just one moment. It could be one big shot, one big drawn charge, one big defensive possession where you get the 5-second call or get the trap in the corner. But you need guys to step up, and Arizona's had that over the years. And granted, you look at those great early loot teams, you were bringing NBA players off the bench, whether it was Judd Bushler or whoever. But later on, it was guys who were role players who could make big plays when you needed them.
Brad, have I told you about the Gila River Resorts and Casinos?
You have. You've spoken fondly of it.
I'm going to continue to speak fondly of that because they deserve to be spoken fondly of. You do you at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Visit playatgila.com for more details. At Gila River Resorts and Casinos, no one does it better. A fun and authentic and immersive experience. Very, very cool. The Gila River Resorts and Casinos and Illegal Pete's. William Brad Ellis, have you ever been to Illegal Pete's?
I have.
It's very good, is it not?
Delicious.
All right.
And the food's good too.
The food is fantastic. fantastic. That's very funny. Illegal Pete's is here to bring you a win with their legendary sound check deal. Bring in your ticket stub for any ticketed event and get a draft beer or a house margarita for a penny. Illegal Pete's wants to celebrate with you, whether it's a pregame or postgame party. They got you covered for all your game day needs. Must purchase an adult entree to redeem Illegal Pete's sound check deal. Illegal Pete's, your go-to spot for burritos, buddies, and beer. And join the PHNX and Illegal Pete's Bracket Challenge for free. Prizes at the top 3 finishes include Die Hard membership, shirts, and gift cards to the PHNX locker and Illegal Pete's gift cards. Check out our socials for the link to sign up. All kinds of good stuff. All right, like I said, at some point, at some point, Krivas is going to have to be in there. Like I said, I'm not going to say that it's ideal, but at some point, I think that Krivas is going to have to be there. One thing Krivas has to stop doing, stop dribbling the ball. Never put the ball on the ground. I have 2 orders for 2 players on this team. Pelle Larsson, you get 2 dribbles, nothing more. Mount Krivas, you get no dribbles. Stop putting the ball on the ground. There's no reason to put it on the ground. William, I see you agreeing.
No, I mean, I just think back. I've been having this conversation about Arizona big men for 30 years.
Right.
Don't dribble. Don't put the ball on the floor. Don't dribble. Yeah. Don't bring the ball down.
It's really not that difficult.
I get why they do it. It's a rhythm thing. You get that little rhythm dribble.
I get it, but don't do it because you're almost always going to lose the ball. That's Now, I also have another bold prediction. The Pac-12 is going to have more teams in the second weekend than the Big Ten. I think Arizona is going to be in the second weekend. I think Oregon is going to be in the second weekend. And I could see another third team. I don't know if that's Washington State or not making it in there. The Big Ten.
I don't like their matchup.
I'm telling you.
Washington State got screwed.
They did get screwed. But the Big Ten, bet against the Big Ten because, again, every single year, I think they only got 13 teams in this year. Maybe one of those teams will get there. By the way, I think Tom Izzo and North Carolina against North Carolina is a tough second-round matchup for North Carolina. But that is my bold prediction, Brad. More Pac-12 teams than Big Ten teams.
In the second weekend?
Yep.
I'm going to say push.
All right, you're going to say push. Well, either way, with a stacked field, that's still a win for the Pac-12.
I'll tell you what. I mean, obviously, I think Purdue probably gets there, even though we know it's Purdue. Weird way, I really like Illinois. And I know I shouldn't because they're in the Big Ten, but I really like Illinois.
All right. Well, Brad, either way, you're going with a push. I'm going with a Pac-12 win. This is correct.
Yeah. And again, I could see Izzo doing it because Izzo can coach. Even though I think North Carolina is really, really good, but it's Izzo. Don't bet against him, especially when he's the underdog.
North Carolina speaking of which, number 1 seed. North Carolina, I think, got a tough draw. I'll be honest with you. We're talking about Dayton. North Carolina, I do not want to play. Listen, I know Michigan State underachieved this season, but I do not want to play Michigan State in the second round because, again, they're pretty talented. They've got a lot of pieces going for them, and Izzo is kind of anti-Big Ten in that his teams generally pick up the pace come NCAA tournament time.
Again, I always feel, and again, it's part of the perception, he's always better as a 7 to 10 seed than he is as a 4. It's just what's the T-shirt from the one guy from CBS? January, February, Izzo.
Right, exactly. It's a thing.
So
it's a thing. He's the anti-Big Ten. Also, Oregon. I think Oregon's going to beat South Carolina. I think Oregon. This is not the time of the year where you want to play Oregon. Altman generally gets it going,
and they're clicking. They're healthy-ish.
You've got one of the best big men in the country, and in Folly Dante. I think they're going to beat South Carolina. Period. Boom.
Yeah. I think the SEC's a little overrated. Mm-hmm. People seem to be loving the SEC right now, and they're fine, they're good, but they don't look any better than I don't know. They got a lot of teams in and a lot of iffy teams in it.
I am very curious to see how the Big 10, or excuse me, how the Big 12 fares in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, they fared very well of late, but you've got Houston. Houston
is banged up.
Houston is banged up, and not only is Houston banged up, they also have one of their Achilles heels really showed against Iowa State, and that they can't score. And again, they're tough. They beat you up. They're really good, but they can't score. That is a problem come tournament time. That being said, it's still a team that should probably come out of their region, but it's not going to be easy for them. And Kansas, while
banged up,
Kansas, you talk about banged up. Exactly. This is going to
Samford can beat them.
What's that?
Samford can beat them.
I agree with that.
I think there's a very good chance you're going to see Samford, McNeese State both playing each other.
5 of a kind media asking me the question that needs to be asked. Yes, I have Oregon beating Creighton in the second round. There, I just said it. Caleb Love, third team All-American. Did this just come out, Joseph? Good. Listen, I think Caleb Love he heard his case. The last 3 games of the season, I think it was there for him to at least solidify himself as a second teamer. And he, let's be honest, he did not play well. So I can't really sit here and really complain about that one, William.
No, I mean, first, second, I mean, again, he's still an All-American. I mean,
and he was the Pac-10 or Pac-12 player of the year, so that's obviously
and rightfully so. Yeah, but again, it was going to be hard anyways because of his reputation, because of him playing, 97 games on the Pac-12 network, which oddly enough, now that it's gone, I'm kind of going to miss. I think their coverage was excellent. Their mechanics of it were awful.
Well, right. They had good people on there, but like you said, the mechanics were absolutely terrible. Yes, so,
I missed so many tip-offs because the app didn't update to let me choose the game.
Oh yeah, I mean, big picture, I'm glad to be getting out of there, but I mean, there is some nostalgia very much in play. As far as that goes. Now, let's get back to something that I wanted to talk about here. Arizona now has a chance, and if they haven't already, Arizona has a chance, I think, to clearly solidify themselves as the preeminent West Coast power moving forward. UCLA is in the toilet under Mick Cronin. I don't see that one getting any better. Then Gonzaga, let's be honest here. Gonzaga feels a little bit like Lute did in his last 3 or 4 years, that, yeah, they still got some players. Yeah, they could still be dangerous, but it's not a dominant entity anymore. Meanwhile, Tommy Lloyd's had a top 2 seed each year. He's got a top 10 recruiting class coming in. There's no reason to believe that that's going to fall off. Arizona, with a nice run here, I think has a real chance to solidify themselves as the preeminent West Coast team moving forward, William.
Oddly enough, doesn't it almost kind of remind you of Lute moving into that second phase of early to mid-90s basketball when UNLV fell off? And Gonzaga and UNLV, they're very different how they're built, but they're both mid-majors who...
Herrick was about to get popped for cheating.
Yeah, who were dominant. And they were seeing, Cronin going to get popped for being an a-hole. Right. Yeah, and again, it's going to be different because you're not going to be playing a lot of West Coast basketball. You're going to be playing a lot of Midwest basketball. But I think, barring a first weekend flameout, it's safe to say Tommy Lloyd has put Arizona back at the top of the pecking order in the West Coast.
Yeah, and again, that's what they got to do. Now, you get to the Sweet 16. Baylor's an interesting matchup. Baylor, this is not a dominant Baylor team in that. It's not the team that, that we've seen in the past where they could just beat you up there and that, that zone defense and whatever that could just kill you. And you had multiple NBA players. They do have multiple NBA players, but it's also not a squad that Arizona can't beat. You do have 6 guys that score in double figures, but your most talented player is also a freshman. I like Arizona's chances against Baylor in that second weekend.
The zone worries me, and Baylor does have some guys who can shoot the 3, but Baylor's not a good defensive team this year.
Which is wild.
It is. They don't have that one defensive stopper. They've not been good in close games. Whereas, say what you will about Arizona, Arizona can score, but Arizona's a good to very good defensive team.
Right.
Again, unless you're pick and rolling them to death. So, yeah, and Baylor's a team a lot like Arizona. They're a poor man's Arizona. I could see them losing their opening game. I could also see them in the Final Four. Right. I think the Sweet 16 feels about right. But, I mean, they have an elite coach. They have some elite athleticism. They can score on a par with Arizona. The thing I like about Arizona, that matchup, is the ability to get a couple key stops here and there because of Arizona's defense.
Right. Oh, listen to this. Look at 5 of a kind media. 5 of a kind media. Colgate upsets Baylor. Let's go.
I love picking first round upsets. I'm not picking that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd love to listen. 5
I'd love for it to happen.
You're going to get full credit. All right. Why is everyone so high on New Mexico? This is a great question. I've actually watched 2 New Mexico games this year, so I consider myself an expert on the inside. Why is everyone so high on New Mexico? First of all, you've got a couple frontline players. Generally, when you're dealing with Mountain West schools, is that where they're in? They're in the Mountain West? Okay.
Which is my favorite conference right now. I've watched so much Mountain West basketball the last month or so because they were on that CBS Sports Network.
Yeah, 9:00
game. What was it? Was it the Colorado? Was it the Colorado State Utah State game?
Yes.
Where the lead changed 6 times in the final 30 seconds.
It's fun basketball, and these teams are actually good. That's the thing. Mr. Tyler Warden, you just hit the ball out of the park. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's a great backcourt. It is funny let's make fun of ASU for a second. Look at all these players. Jalen House is killing it. He's been one of the better he's been a top 10 point guard in the country this year, from defense to offense. Obviously, you got Jamal Mashburn Jr. But not only that, you've also got DJ Horn at North Carolina State putting in almost 17 per game. Duke Brennan, the great Duke Brennan, 8-6 at Grand Canyon, also in the tournament. Warren Washington, very, very funny watching our friends at ASU lose players that are better than them, Brad Ellis.
So what you're telling me is Bobby Hurley needs to start a recruiting service and get out of coaching.
I don't know, man. That thing just feels like that's just not ending well for him.
It's okay. And again, I'm no longer watching the Pac-12's dead. But the fact that if Arizona was going back to a Pac-12 where Bobby Hurley, Mick Cronin, if I'm Dana Altman, I'm looking for an out. I think he's run his course at Oregon, unfortunately. I think infield, maybe they should just switch programs, infield and Altman. It's really weird. Again, I think the fact that Cronin's still at UCLA just tells me they don't have money for a buyout. Right. Because he's tarnished that program. He really has, man. They either need they've had a bunch of a-hole coaches there. I mean, Alfred, not a great guy.
But he's a step above.
Yeah. I mean, what he did to, Justin Spears was uncalled for.
Remember when they pretended that his dad was assaulted and then nothing ever came from that?
Or where they called the cops at McHale because they were filming his players leaving the court?
Yeah. He sucks.
There's a classless thing there. Again, if he did those antics every once in a while, blame the ref once every 25 games. Okay. Because sometimes we wish Lute or Miller would have done that. Like, we got hosed. And Miller did it once. He touched the ball.
Miller was generally a real jerk to officials, though.
Yeah. And every once in a while, Lute and Miller, in their own ways, would call out players. But they do it subtly.
And they didn't call
I don't know when Jamel Horn's coming back.
Stupid.
But Cronin's just like, I can't do anything more. Well, because you're not a good enough coach.
Yeah, you know what? And this is your roster, buddy. Guess what? You can't continue to live off of Steve Alford's players. Take that, Steve Alford, haters.
Yeah, Steve Alford was a great recruiter. He just didn't recruit the right guys always for his team. And Miller, a lot of times I felt like they were looking at baseball cards. Ooh, got it, need it. Who cares if you have 4 Alonzo Triers and you want to play rugged defense?
Joseph, this is a fair point, but here's what I'm going to say about this. When I watch Tommy Lloyd, I've never understood the approach that somebody like Sean Miller had with officials, where you go out of your way let's use Mick Cronin, that's a better example. You call officials every name in the book. I have refereed many basketball games. I'll tell you this, and this is human nature, and if it's a 50-50 call and you have been a total jerk to me all game, and I can go either way with a clear frame of reference, guess what? You're not getting the call. So when you're calling them MFers and some of the worst names possible, I've never understood that. You go and you watch Tommy Lloyd. Tommy Lloyd's chatting them up before the games. Now you could say the aw shucks thing has run its course, whatever. But if you're an official, you're still a human. And if somebody's been calling you a MFer the whole game, which, first of all, I don't know how he gets away with that. I have no clue how you can continue to allow somebody to call you that and not eject them. That's a very good point, Joseph. I can't disagree with any of that. How does this happen?
I don't know. And again, I ref youth girls volleyball.
Let's not minimize the tough factor in that.
I coach, Little League baseball. Even when I coach high school football, my whole thing was I like to put the refs on the spot, but nicely. Like, hey, wasn't that a hold?
Right.
No, it wasn't. Why not? So later I could go, hey, that you just said when they do that, that's not a hold. And I've been known to get some calls from time to time.
Look at William Brad Alice, the Arab Parseesian of the South.
I don't know about that. I'm going to disagree with you. But then the next time you come in the gym, they give you benefit of the doubt. Now I also once shoved a rule book in a ref's face. Who
Is there
said,
video of this?
No, this was Choya 99, where basically they ran into my punt returner and said, well, there's no halo rule in high school football. I'm like, yeah, but you got to let the guy catch the football. And proceeded to, and he never did give me the 15-yard penalty, though. I did. So, but yeah, I don't understand. You dropped the MFer, and what's the old line from Bull Durham? Must have called him as that word that the umpires don't like.
I just don't understand it. And the thing with Cronin and Joseph, that's a very good point. The thing with Cronin is he calls him that all game. How is there not some form of a meeting where you're like, listen, when this dork calls us this, immediate T. Guess what? If he calls you it again, immediate T. Guess what he's going to stop doing after a while? Doing that.
It's almost like those teams that like beat you up in the paint and then they dare you. They can't call it every play. Well, they could, and they should.
Yes, they should. It was like with Pete Carroll, where he said, we're going to hold on every single possession because guess what? They can't keep calling it.
Well, you know who tried that strategy and it did not work in the tournament was Illinois. Remember, how many calls did Illinois get in 0-1 against Arizona in the Elite Eight? And then the next year they played Washington and the same thing happened. And like, oh, those refs. No, you cheated.
You cheated. Oh, cheating. That's another thing. We got to talk a lot about cheating. We got everybody there with the NCAA tournament here. We all need your boots on the ground, keeping an eye on cheating, because there again, we have to keep an eye, especially with all the Big Ten nonsense going on. All right.
I do think the good news is, and someone put this in the call, if they're trying to build ratings and if they're trying to, I don't believe they really do that, but the one that makes sense is the Caleb Love revenge game between Carolina and.
Oh yeah, for sure. That makes total sense.
So if they're going to milk some calls one way or another, it's not to get a Baylor-Michigan State matchup.
Let's see here. Five of a Kind Media, with all due respect, they do not want him because
they hired the guy.
They hired the interim coach.
Yeah.
But
because I also heard that Cronin wanted that job. Cronin wants Michigan. I've heard Altman.
He's got like an $18 million buyout or something. It's something insane like that. If I'm UCLA, I'm waiving the buyout.
I'm like,
bye.
Oh, yeah, exactly. We'll pay you to leave.
We will pay you to leave. All right, William Brad Alice. We will get you on later in the week, but do you have any podcasts coming up?
I'm hoping to get some recording. Unfortunately, like I said, I've mentioned this before. I'm president of Flowing Wells Little League, and it's just kicking my butt. In fact, I got to still order uniforms later today from the Diamondbacks. Thank you to the Diamondbacks for donating uniforms to little leagues across the state.
You deserve that.
And then we got some practices, and I got to demote a kid down to AA because he's scared of the baseball. And
all right, been there, done that.
It's like running a fantasy league, but with 160 people.
All right. He is the great William Brad Alice. He will be on later in the week. All of your comments here were much appreciated. And Dennis Walsh, nobody would be a jerk to me because, again, the gun show.
Hey, just speaking of gun show, it's funny that you mentioned that. I know someone who went on an unofficial visit late last week, said they couldn't believe how big T-Mac looks.
Oh, he's huge. He's a monster.
That it was just unbelievable. And then just mentioned the energy in that weight room was infectious. So good things. That. I think some good things happening around the program, and they're really doing, I think, a better job than Fish's staff did with local high schools that aren't South Point.
Right.
Because I heard some stories that I didn't like how, you don't have to recruit guys, but don't be dorks to coaches here locally, because you never know when that guy is going to come out of the woodwork.
Exactly. He's the great William Brad Alice. I am merely Mike Luke. We will be back with you tomorrow. Back the A. You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.